It's time to debrief the past 2 weeks. Friday the 13th, on the morning of Friday the 13th, at 9:30 a.m, there was an EBA committee meeting for Don. For those who don't know, EBA committee is the Enterprise Bargaining Agreement Committee. Don KR is currently in the process of negotiating an EBA. And around 5 or 6 months ago, I had myself elected to the EBA committee. Not just to represent myself, but also to represent my co-workers. And although the appointment of myself to the EBA committee was largely to represent myself, after being appointed, I promised my co-workers that I would seek to do the job not just for myself, but also for them, and that I would do so with a sense of honour and integrity. This is me keeping that promise. On the morning of Friday the 13th, at that EBA committee, we were discussing the failure of the vote that had taken place just days before. And we were discussing all the things that co-workers had suggested that they had problems with. The things that they wanted to see in the EBA. Now, my co-workers, a number of them said to me that they really wanted the Eves Days. The Eves Days are Melbourne Cup Eve, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve. And they explained to me that the reason for why these Eves Days are so important to them is because they represent time with their families. Melbourne Cup Eve turns into a 4-day weekend. There's a lot of families go camping, spend time with their kids. Christmas Eve, parents want to be there with their children so they can see them on Christmas Eve. Grandparents want to be there with their grandchildren to see them on Christmas Eve. And similar too with respect of New Year's Eve. You know, parents want to be there so they can take their kids to see the fireworks. Grandparents want to be there so they can see the look in their kids' faces. Look, Nanny, all the pretty colours. You know, it's important to them, and logically so. The other thing that was discussed was the 15% pay rise. Now, maintenance had a new EBA negotiated at Don around 7 or 8 months ago. Maintenance got 16%. And in the committee meeting, I said, and I quote, that if maintenance can get 16%, then 15% for us should be a breeze. I got laughed at. As in the company. The 6 company executives that were there laughed at me. 3 of which I can name: Julian Giorgio, Gordon Adams, and Mark Hodge. All 3 laughed at me. Thought it was a joke. Which, to my mind at the time, and even still, demonstrates an extreme level of contempt for the workers of Don KR. Right? As the meeting went on, and different committee members were offering their different perspectives and viewpoints, before the meeting closed, I said, and I quote, that with respect to the ease days, and I said with respect to the pay rise, I said with respect of all of it. I said there's a very smart man who once said, look after your workers and business will take care of itself. The board members from the company, again, laughed at me, demonstrating an extreme level of contempt for the workers. Okay, if any of the workers at Don think that the board members of Don KR give a rat's ass about them, they are wrong. The board, the directors of Don KR do not give a rat's about the workers. They see the workers as an inconvenience. The workers stand, the workers are in the way. In the way between them getting a bigger bonus, which is what they're all about. All right, it doesn't matter which one of those board members you look at. All right, Gordon Adams, Julian Giorgio, Mark Hodge, all they care about is the money in their bank accounts. All they care about is that they are getting $10,000 a week for sitting on their bums drinking coffee. They do not care about the workers. All right, now, aside from the East days, aside from the 15% pay raise, both of those two things should be a given. Number 3. Thanks to my investigations, we found out that Don KR has a secret contract with the ACs, area coordinators. They're kind of like foremen. Now, the secret contract that Don KR has with the ACs can't be about their base rate, because their base rate, their base wage, is in the EBA. There's long been a rumour at Don that the ACs were being paid bonuses based on the KPIs. That's the product output. It's kilos per individual, right? And based on those KPIs, it's long been believed that the ACs, the foremen, or 4 people, were being paid bonuses based on those KPIs. I found out about the secret contract between Don KR and the ACs. Lo and behold, the ACs are being paid bonuses based on the KPIs. I have long petitioned during the process of the EBA committee. I have long petitioned that those KPIs belong to all the workers, not just the ACs. The ACs live a life of privilege. They get between $3,000 and $4,000 a week, while ordinary workers at Don struggle. Right, now, I have long petitioned that those KPIs belong to everybody, which they do. They should not be the exclusive territory of the ACs. Every worker at Don has earned their share of those KPIs. Now, on the Friday that I was at the last meeting, which, as I said, Friday, 13th of March, was the last EBA committee meeting that I attended. And I said, as I said that a very smart man once said, look after your workers and business will take care of itself. And they all laughed. And they said, ha 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 ha, is he still in business? And I said, yes, he is actually. His name's Richard Branson and he's a billionaire. To which they laughed further, demonstrating contempt for the workers. Okay, these board members have absolute disdain for the workers. That afternoon I was sacked. On the Monday, so literally the next business day, there was another board meeting for the EBA committee. Essentially 24 hours after I was sacked. So clearly my sacking was very much because of my involvement in the EBA committee. Had I not been involved in the EBA committee, I'd still be working there. I knew that from the outset. The minute that I got on that board, I knew that I was doomed, because I knew that a person of my honesty, my integrity, stepping out to speak the truth and stand up for workers, I knew that they would find a reason to sack me. I was right. The fact that they had another board meeting literally on the next day also proves to me that Don KR blamed me for the negative result in the vote. Good. I take that as a compliment. Thank you. So, if you are someone who is still working at Don KR, vote no. Okay? There's another vote for the EBA coming up right now. The voting process is tomorrow and Friday. Vote no. Okay? And if anyone asks you why you're voting no, you tell them Glenn sent you. Okay? You need to hold out. Eves days, 15%, and your share of the KPIs. Do not settle for anything less. The board of Don KR are lying to you. They are flat out lying to you. And they are born liars, every one of them. Okay? Don KR is $1 billion company. They turn over more than $1 billion each year. All right? Turning out a product, as far as salami and small goods are concerned, a product that is laden with soy, which makes it cancerous. And they're wondering why their business is turned down. Take a guess. All right? The board of Don KR are lying to their workers. The board of Don KR live on lies and deception. And if you need proof, look no further than how Don KR treats the workers from the Solomon Islands, who are slaves. They are slaves at Don. And how Don treats them is nothing short of rotten. The Don KR owns the Caravan and Cabin Park in the centre of Castlemaine, which they run as a labour camp. It is a labour camp for the workers from the Solomon Islands, where they pay ridiculously high rents to live under circumstances that even homeless Australians would reject. Right? Living 3 and 4 to a cabin intended for 2 people. Right? They charge ridiculously high rents. The Solomon Island workers who work at Don KR fork out half their wage to live in a caravan and cabin park that Don owns. Don could give them free rent and chalk it up as a tax deduction. But no, because Don is all about profit. It cares nothing for the workers. It cares nothing for the Solomon Islanders. It cares nothing for the visa workers. It does not care for anybody except itself. They care for the money in their pockets. They care for the fact that they get $10,000 a week for sitting on their bum drinking coffee while ordinary workers struggle. That's Don. Bringing out the good. Yeah, right. So if you work at Don and you're going to vote on the EBA tomorrow, vote no. And if anyone asks you why you're voting no, you tell them Glenn sent you. And with respect to that caravan and cabin park in the centre of Castlemaine, that is a dirty big conflict of interest. And it absolutely amazes me that no one in the media has shown any interest. Okay? Those Solomon Islander workers deserve better than being made to live in a labour camp. If you're in Russia or if you're in China, labour camps are part of the furniture. But Australia is not Russia. Australia is not China. We should never, ever consider labour camps as acceptable. They are not. Solomon Islander workers pay tax twice. First, they pay the same tax as you and I do. And then they also pay fees to something called LSA, Labour Services Australia, which is a sub-office to Workforce Australia, a taxpayer-funded government department. So they're paying the same taxes as us to fund that government department, and then they're paying fees to LSA, a taxpayer-funded government department, a sub-department to Workforce Australia, right? They're paying fees, so they're paying another tax. They're being taxed twice. And whatever's left of their wage after being taxed twice, rent, which they pay back to their employer. So their employer's paying their wage with one hand and then shoveling it all back in their own pocket with the other hand. If you work at Don, vote no. You deserve those Eves days. You deserve 15% pay rise, and you deserve your share of those KPIs. This is just part one of the debrief. I've got 2 more to come. No worries.